Hi, I'm Charles Goodell and welcome to a K12Press Solutions tutorial on YouTube. We're going to be working in the Webmaster Hub today to show you guys how to use Divi padding and margins to design your web pages. Now this is a fundamental basic aspect of every module, section, or row element within Divi. You have the ability to change the spacing. That's whether or not you use a margin to change the spacing or padding. Now there's two main differences there. Margins and spacing give you space between, margin and padding give you spaces between the elements on your web page. But there is a difference there, and it's a subtle difference. If you think about it as a container of information, you have a container of information and you have maybe some text or images inside that container. Well, if you give that container padding, then that's going to, on the inside of the container, provide spacing between the content inside that container and the edges of your container on the inside. A margin is that spacing on the outside of your container. So a margin is the spacing on the outside of the container. A padding element, or padding, is the spacing on the inside of that container. To show you what I mean here, we're going to just go over here to one of our XYZ Academy demo pages, and we can go into the Visual Builder and I can show you right here. So if we were to say, hey, let's look at, you see how I kind of hovered over that? It's actually showing you that there's 127 pixels of padding at the top of this section right here. Well, let's click on the gear icon of this section, go to the Design tab, go down here to Spacing, and you'll see that yes, indeed, they have a top padding for 127 pixels. We have a bottom padding down here of 130 pixels. We have zero padding on left and right. By the way, if you want to make sure that the left or right or the top or bottom have the same amount, you just click the little link icon in between there and it'll make sure that you only have to change the numbers in one field there and it will match on the other field. But there's no margins defined here. There's zero margins defined, and that's because the padding is inside this section. We want some space between that section where we have this background color and design element and the title that's on there. But you know, you can change this and you'll see that the padding reduces as you drag that up or down, and you can also click these buttons to make it go up or down for a little better fine-tuning of exactly what size you want. But to show you a quick example of why padding's on the inside and margins on the outside, we have these, you know, dividers at the top of this section and the bottom of the other section. If I were to put some margin there, you see how we now have the background showing through? That's giving 21 pixels margin at the top of this section. Away from that, it doesn't look right. So we want to make sure that you're using we're using padding and margins appropriately at the right places. There's also needs for negative margins. You can't really do negative padding, but you can do negative margins. And negative margins are a useful tool within Divi to be able to do some design work. Like, here we go. Inside this section, I actually have this image, this logo. But I want that logo to kind of pop off the screen, so I have a drop shadow there. But I want it to kind of raise above and be on the line in between these two sections. So if we click on this module element and we go into design, you will see that I have a margin of negative 160 pixels applied to the top. That means 160 pixels. If we took that away, you would see that that's how it normally would line up on the page. If you give it that 160 pixels, well, that puts it up there nice and neat. Now you have 60 pixels at the bottom, that's in between this and that title there. But you may want to know how to do padding on the left and right. Well, let's take a look at this button here. We can go to the same thing, design, spacing, and this button has a little padding around the text, 14 pixels on the top and the bottom, padding on the left and the right, 20 pixels. You see how these are linked to make them the same. But then you have a little bit of margin. At the top we have 12 pixels between the bottom of this container that has this text in it and the top of this button here. At the bottom we have 30 pixels that we've added. If we wanted to take that away, you'd see that, you know, of course, shrinks the size. That comes up a little bit. But let's say you wanted to put a little bit more margin and have this maybe a little left off center or something like that. Well, you can add some pixels here, 20 pixels, and you see how this will shift over a little bit. I'm not sure I saw it shift. Hold on. Okay, it did. It was just so. We're talking about 20 pixels. But what if you wanted to keep things more responsive? Responsive meaning, whether you're looking at it on an iPad or a really large desktop monitor or your phone. Well, a couple of things to talk about here. You can use percentage instead of pixel, so you can just type in % there. And that's going, see how it jumped over quite a bit more? Well, that's because it's using 20% of the width of the container to be able to set that that margin on the left there. So you can use percentage. That makes it a little bit more responsive. Be careful, test it out, make sure it's what you want. A lot of times you want it to be structured with pixels because you want it to look the same on either or. But if you're working with something that needs to be more responsive, you can use percentages there. But also, this is a good point to bring up, you should work with making sure that things look correct on both your mobile and your tablet views using your margins, because you may set 160 pixel margin somewhere on here and it looks great on desktop because you have that negative space and it's working, but that may be a little bit too much space when you're using a mobile device. You may want a little bit less so there's not as much of a scroll to get to that next content. Well, you can define separate margins and padding elements for whether or not you're looking at it on a mobile device or a tablet or a desktop. And to be able to do that, you hover over and you click on this little mobile icon there, and that gives you these three tabs: your desktop view, your tablet view, and your phone view. Now, by default, everything is set, whatever you set in here in the beginning, that's for all three. So right now I haven't changed anything. I've just clicked this to enable that I can make changes, but everything's inheriting the same desktop padding for all three devices. But say on tablet view, I wanted to reduce some of this padding or information there. So maybe I want the buttons to be even bigger on that looks a little funky, but maybe a little bit bigger on the mobile view. But maybe you want the margins to be a little bit smaller on mobile view. So you can click on the little mobile thing there and you can say, you know what, I want it to have 0 margin on that, so don't shift it over. You see how it jumped over and it's absolutely defined now, 0 and 0. You can always click that on tablet view to where it's right in the center. It's not offset on the side. Those are options for you to be able to do. A lot of times that's the main edit I make when I'm editing the view or the look between a desktop view and a mobile view. Divi does a great job of making websites responsive by default. However, if you're going to tweak something to make it a little bit different from one to the other, I would say padding and margin. The spacing on stuff is 9 times out of 10 the thing that I'm editing the most when it comes to changing the view between a desktop, tablet, or mobile phone view. Either way, you're going to get used to working with padding and margins. It's best to understand the differences and just know that it's all in the design tab of every section, every row, column, and every module within Divi. So you're going to get used to using it. Again, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe if you're working on a school, district, or campus website using WordPress. I have a feeling that K12Press Solutions on YouTube would be a wealth of information for you. Thank you very much and have a great day.